Our Old Testament reading for the day comes from Psalm 90, verses 1 through 6 and 12 through 17. Hear now the word of the Lord. Lord, you have always been our dwelling place throughout all generations. Before the mountains were born, or you brought forth the whole world, from everlasting to everlasting, you are God. You turn people back to dust, saying, "Return to dust, you mortals." 1,000 years in your sight are like a day that has just gone by, or like a watch in the night. Yet you sweep people away in the sleep of death. They are like the new grass of the morning. In the morning it springs up new, but by evening it is dry and withered. So teach us to number our days, that we may gain a heart of wisdom. Relent, Lord, how long will it be? Have compassion on your servants. Satisfy us in the morning with your unfailing love, that we may sing for joy and be glad all our days. Make us glad for as many days as you have afflicted us, for as many years as we have seen trouble. May your deeds be shown to your servants, your splendor to their children. May the favor of the Lord our God rest on us. Establish the work of our hands for us. Yes, establish the work of our hands. Now, Jess, could you bring our rock up for the day? As we continue to read Psalms, we've been on a journey through the Psalms this summer, so we are building a rock altar, a cairn, to identify this is a holy and important place. Thank you, Jess. So we continue our summer Psalms sermon series today as we journey together. So far, we have talked about God being our refuge amidst chaos. We've talked about yearning for God when our souls are thirsty. We've talked about longing to be at peace in God's presence. So all good stuff, restful stuff. And then today we land in Psalm 90, and it opens up with death. Bum, bum, bum. Nothing like a fun sermon about dying to make us feel good, right? But stick with me, because I think this is a lovely, restful psalm that really offers a lot of peace if we can recognize the big reminder in verse 1. Lord, you have been our dwelling place throughout all generations. If we can remember that, then we can celebrate and we can echo what last week's psalm celebrated. How lovely is your dwelling place, O Lord Almighty. So this Psalm 90 reminds us that one day God's dwelling place will also be our dwelling place when we finish this earthly life. But let's back up for a second. First, if you were following along or looking in a Bible as we read, you might have noticed that this psalm has some info before it starts. So the ancient Israelites divided up the big book of Psalms, the longest book in the Bible. They divided it up into 5 sections. Psalm 90 starts book 4. And the Psalms in this section are big on the theme of wilderness. That's because these Psalms in book 4 were organized together during a big wilderness kind of time when the Israelites were in exile. So a lot of these Psalms talk about and sing about the exodus from Egypt and Moses' leadership and wandering through the wilderness for 40 years because there's a big tie-in. The inscription before this psalm says, "A prayer of Moses, the man of God." Very lovely. So maybe this psalm had been sung and passed down for like 600 years, which was the time between Moses and the Israelites' exile later. Or maybe the Psalms in this section were inspired by Moses and the Exodus to speak to the terrible exile that the people were having to endure. For both of those really hard times, the Exodus, wilderness wandering, and the being captured and taken into exile, one of the saddest things about it was people watching their friends or family who died along the way or still in exile and who never made it back home. That's why this psalm doesn't try to dress up death or pretend it's not a big deal. This psalm recognizes and acknowledges the stark reality of death. So when Moses or the psalm writer talks about our lives being like grass that in the morning springs up new, but by evening is dry and withered, he's basing it on what he has seen, his friends and family he has lost along the way. And then in a few chapters later, another psalm will say, the life of mortals is like grass. They flourish like a flower of the field. The wind blows over it and it is gone. So these are definitely downer psalms. I get it. But they are very true. The more we will watch people pass away, it will happen more often the longer that we live, as we have to say goodbye to friends and family who lie into the sleep of death. It's true. It's not the happiest or jubilant of psalms, but it is true. So at this point, it's okay for someone here to stand up and say, boo, boo, preach a happy sermon, boo. I didn't come to here, get bummed out, boo. I get it. I understand. I have that worry. I feel that every year when we start the very solemn season of Lent during our Ash Wednesday service. And the whole point of that service is to remind us of our mortality, which is a total downer. It's why there aren't any Hallmark cards for that holiday. No one sends you a card that says, Happy Ash Wednesday, remember you'll die. No, there are no cards like that. It's not the happiest thing to celebrate or to remember. Because what do most of us do? We spend our lives trying not to think about that fact. We fill our calendars, we scroll our phones, we binge another show, anything to keep from sitting still long enough to feel the weight of verse 3, where it reminds us that one day we will return to dust. Maybe if we just don't think about it, it won't actually happen. That works, right? If we just pretend or deny something's not true, it's not true. Is that how life works? It's kind of like if you ever have a pain and you think, oh, that really hurts, but I'll just walk it off. That'll take care of it. I definitely don't want to go to the doctor because I don't want to hear what the doctor would say. As if that changes anything or helps anything about the pain that you're experiencing. There's some real pain in you, and you go, nope, I don't want to go to the doctor. I don't want to know what that is. Maybe it's something bad. If it is, I don't want to know. Is that the best way to handle it? Or if your car starts making a weird noise, you say, it'll probably work itself out eventually. I don't need to have it looked at. It's kind of like the old joke, how do you fix your car when the check engine light comes on? You put some tape over it, right? That works, yes, it fixes the problem. But ignoring the check engine light does not fix the car. It just means you won't learn what the real issue is until later, usually at a worse time, in a worse way, that costs a little more. Psalm 90 doesn't let us ignore the check engine light of our lives. It makes us look right at it. But Psalm 90 doesn't leave us staring at the dashboard in despair. It moves us somewhere. It moves us toward verse 12. Teach us to number our days that we may gain a heart of wisdom. Number our days. Not ignore them, not dread our days, number them. Some translations say, teach us to number our days aright or to count them carefully. Because when you start counting something, you treat it differently. You're paying a little more attention. We don't have unlimited years to live on this earth. We have a finite amount. So let's think about what that involves. If we're supposed to number our days aright and count them, well, let's start counting. Okay, let's say a person lives to be the good age of 85. It's a nice round number and it's above the national average. So let's say if we all lived just to age 85 and no more, what kind of numbers and days are we talking about? Well, that comes to over 31,000 days in our life. So a lot, that's a lot of days, but it's not an unimaginable number. We can get our heads around that. So over 31,000 days means we could only see and appreciate 31,000 sunsets. But how many do we actually look at? How many sunsets do we miss because we're inside doing something else? Also, since we sleep about a third of every 24 hours, if we live to age 85, then we would only have about 57 years worth of being awake and 28 years of being asleep. That's weird to think about, especially if you did it all at once. Okay, I'll sleep for 28 years and then I'll be awake for 57 years and be super productive. If we live to age 85, we would get to enjoy a little less than 4,500 weekends in our lifetime. That's an even smaller number. And of course, the number gets even smaller if we live to age 85. Then we would only have 85 Christmases to celebrate. So each one that we get to have, well, that's one less. That gives us some perspective, doesn't it? And here is one more remarkable statistic. So naturally, when kids are growing up, they spend a lot of time with their parents, learning, playing, doing stuff, throwing temper tantrums, having their diapers changed, all the kinds of stuff that kids do while they're growing up. Then when the kid is old enough, they move out and get their own place, whether it's age 18 or 22 or whatever it is. Eventually, the kid moves out of their parents' house. And when they do, at that point, they will have finished 90% of the total in-person, face-to-face time they'll have with their parents in their life. Isn't that weird to think about? Whether you're a parent or a child, when the move transition happens, even though the relationship is still good and ongoing, and you text and you call and you visit, the in-person, face-to-face time spent with each will be 90% done. Crazy. There's something eye-opening when you crunch the numbers. And it does make you want to appreciate things a little more. Maybe watch a few more sunsets. Maybe make the most of those weekends. Treasure some of those Christmases and value the face-to-face time between parents and kids. Because how many more weekends do we have left? How many more sunsets can we see? That's why this psalm asks God to help us count our days. Not to make us anxious that our days are running out, but to help us spend them wisely, because they're not unlimited. No one's days are. So, better to remember than be caught by surprise. A lot of times when I'm talking with a family before a funeral of a loved one, someone will say a version of, I wish I had called them more, or I wish I had told them more directly, or I wish we had spent more time together. It's a very common thing to hear and to say and to feel. And even when we are at the end, when people are on their deathbed, no one on their deathbed ever says, I wish I had spent more time at work. I don't think you'll ever hear that. Or, I wish I had spent more time scrolling social media. Just a few more memes and reels. I ran out of time. No one will say that. When we have moments of clarity, we don't say any of that stuff. It's always the relationships that were important to us. The undone things, the unsaid things. That's what numbering your days does for you. It clears the fog and shows you what actually matters before it's too late to do something about it. Numbering, counting, being aware of our days helps us stay grounded in what's important. Back in ancient Rome, they would do that with a fascinating practice. If there was a big military victory followed by a big victory parade, then as the general walked through the streets of people celebrating the victory, a servant would walk behind him, repeating the Latin phrase, memento mori, which means in English, remember that you will die. That's quite something, right? What an odd practice. But it was meant to keep the general grounded and humble and realistic. That even though he was at his peak that day, parading around enjoying a great victory, he could very easily be brought low tomorrow. An attack and defeat, death in battle, you never know when or how, but you do know that you will die someday. And this psalm functions in the same way as that servant did. Not to scare us, but to keep us alert, focused, and humble, so that we act wisely, we live smartly. Because it's true. The number of our days are limited, but God's are not. Before the mountains were born, or you brought forth the whole world, from everlasting to everlasting, you are God, it said. That's the other side of this beautiful truth. Our days are special because they are limited, and yet they are held by God who is unlimited. So even though our time here is finite, we rest in the arms of the infinite, something bigger than ourselves. And that is what we pray to. That's what this psalm prays to. And it doesn't pray, I have numbered my days, O God. Now I'm running out of time. Give me more days. No, it does not pray that. It just prays to have good days, doing good work that makes a difference. Verse 14 said, satisfy us in the morning with your unfailing love, that we may sing for joy and be glad all our days. That sounds nice. Who doesn't like having glad days? And then verse 17 prays, establish the work of our hands. which means make the work I do mean something. Make the words I say matter. Because I just counted my days and they won't last forever. So God, help me make the most of every day that I have left. It's like the line from the poet Mary Oliver. Tell me, what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life? So I have a challenge for you today. And it is not the common saying that we often hear, live every day like it's your last. No, I say, don't do that. If we lived like this today was literally our last day on earth, we definitely aren't going to do any laundry. If we lived like every day was our last day, we're not paying any bills. We're not making any investments. We're just living it up. So why bother doing laundry, paying bills? So don't follow that advice. Live every day like it's your last. Instead, live every day like it's important, because it is. When this day finishes, it is done. There's no going back and doing this day again. We only have this day once. So don't waste this day. We only get one chance to make the most of each day. So that's the challenge. And here's a question. If you followed the instructions of this psalm and really remembered that you have limited time here on earth, what would you do differently? Who would you talk to or not? What would you finally say? What would you stop putting off? You don't have to know the specific number of your days. That's not the point, because no one knows. The point is to just be aware of each one you get, to not let them slide by in a distracted haze of work and media and routine, but instead notice each day. Be mindful of what you're consuming, doing, feeling, spending time on, and let God, who has no beginning and no end, fill you with love every morning, so that what you do will make an eternal difference in the lives you touch. That way, whatever number of days you have left, you won't waste any of them. Let's pray. Oh God, we confess that we have not always been mindful of the gift of each day. We have let ourselves be distracted by worldly distractions, the lights, the screens, the work, whatever it is. We have let it take our focus so that we don't notice each day. It is our prayer then that you would wake us up. Wake us up to the gift of each day so that we can notice, recognize, count each day as important, because we only get to live it once. We give you our day today, O God, that you might use it to make an eternal difference in this world. Amen.